Christmas tree. Christmas tree?
Christianity! So today we are talking about Christianity. And Christianity was founded on the worship of Jesus Christ, the one and only. So who's Jesus Christ? Actually, a lot of people really don't know. So we're going to talk about it. Jesus Christ is the Messiah. He is the Son of God. And he was born in Bethlehem, grew up to be a carpenter, but the awesome thing about him is his birth. He was not conceived through human intercourse, which is impossible, which makes it really cool. So that's why he's such an awesome guy. He is basically a miracle. So what's Jesus Christ like? Well, he grew up, lived for 30 years. He was a carpenter, built stuff, so that's cool. How did Jesus start being Jesus in himself and what we have recorded in history? Well, what started it all was he had a relative named John. John was a Baptist, and he called Israel to return to God. And they all went and baptized those who responded in the river of Jordan. And Jesus came along, and he was like, why not? And that day, John, Jesus' relative, was arrested, and Jesus went on to preach in the public. He went to Galilee and started preaching in public. Through preaching in public, he acquired a lot of friends, followers, people who believed in what he was saying. He never really had a permanent home. Him and his friends just wandered around and preached to people, and people who listened and who liked Jesus, which was a lot of people, would give him gifts and blessings and offerings, and if they offered, he would take it, because he was a homeless man, you know. He spoke frequently of the danger of becoming preoccupied with possessions, and what that means is becoming preoccupied in your life about material goods and possessing things. Sometimes it's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to spend more time praying to God, getting in touch with God, and kind of like if someone says, I really, really, really want to go to the mall and buy a pair of shoes because I want those shoes. I want them. Why can't I have them? Or, I guess in a guy's perspective, it would be, I don't know, I really, really, really want to go to GameStop and get that Halo 4 game. I don't know what game guys like to play anymore. So then they get it and they become preoccupied with it. So here they are playing this game when, they should be spending more time getting in touch with God. And that's what he preached, and people liked it. They followed him. Jesus was known for healing illnesses and curing the sick, and that was kind of why people thought he was so majestic and amazing, because there were records that Gospels had told sometimes he could cure someone with a simple touch, and there are also records of him fixing exorcisms or exorcists, and that is driving out demons by a word of command. Also, there have been other accounts where sometimes he could control nature, and a storm would be a-brewing over the sea, really big, mean one, everyone's freaking out, and by a word of his command, it just started calming down, and everyone thought he was this great, amazing person. I think that's awesome. If I saw that, I'd be like, Jesus, you the bomb. So, like other Jewish teachers, Jesus gathered a group of followers. He demanded them be absolutely committed to his ideas and be absolutely committed to God and let God find all your needs. And so they acted as spokesmen, going around preaching and doing healing missions just like Jesus, and they became his 12 disciples. And he spent a lot of time teaching these disciples and preparing them to continue his mission. Alright, so Jesus was an awesome guy, but he posed a threat a lot. And some of the Jewish people really didn't like him because he refused to recognize the barriers that divided people in society. Sometimes he mixed classes and he ate with other classes that weren't his own. And apparently eating with people that aren't your kind is a really bad thing back then. So he did not share the general hatred for Samaritans. And who are the Samaritans? They were a minority of mixed blood that everyone hated, apparently, or just the Jews, the Samaritans. And Jesus didn't hate him. He didn't find anything wrong with them. And so he liked them, and everyone hated Jesus for liking the bad guys. So he even told a story and made a Samaritan the hero of the story, and people were repulsed. They're crazy stuff. He seldom traveled outside his Jewish territory, but he welcomed any non-Jew. That was a bad thing, apparently. He said that the ritual purification mattered less than purity of the heart. He wanted people to be more pure inside. His bold reinterpretation of the Old Testament law moved consistently away from the external keeping of rules about ethics. So he would take the Old Testament and preach it, but only in a completely different way, more so like ethics style. And people didn't like that. They're like, you're changing up the Old Testament, and we don't like that. Stop it, Jesus, stop it. Well, I mean, it was ethics, and ethics are a pretty good thing. So some people can argue that. I mean, he was doing a good thing. But through all of that, this didn't diminish his extreme popularity. His followers tried to force him to be their king in rebellion against Rome. They loved Jesus so much, they're like, Jesus, please rebel for us rebel to Rome. And he said no, because he said his purpose was not politics. He didn't want to be involved with that. So his followers began to dwindle, and those who wanted a military messiah became disillusioned. And even one of his 12 closest disciples betrayed him, and no one understood his real purpose until after his death. So how did Jesus die? Well, something really set off the Jewish leaders. Jesus came riding into the city on a donkey, and this upset people because people should be riding on horses, stallion horses. If you're a great guy, you come riding in on horses, but Jesus, kept saying, I'm the Messiah, I'll ride on a donkey, it's okay, He kept saying, I'm the Messiah, and he had this messianic gesture. He began to argue bitterly about with the religious authorities. Religious authorities. And he showed no sign of acting against Rome. And eventually, the Jewish leader was like, that's it, and he arrested them and charged Jesus on the account of blasphemy. Blasphemy! Because he claimed to be the Messiah of God. That's why he was arrested. He was sentenced to death by crucifixion, which is a barbaric way of dying. They nail you to a crucifix and you slowly die. His disciples, they took him down. His friends and followers took him down after he died and buried him all nice and pretty, gave him a proper burial ceremony. And the cool thing, I guess it's cool, was 2 days later they found the tomb empty. So Jesus' body wasn't there anymore. And the disciples didn't find it surprising because they talked about Jesus and how sometimes he would just be there and sometimes he wouldn't. He could appear and disappear in a room within seconds. So they just said, that's just like Jesus. So Christians followed Jesus and what he taught. That's how Christians work. They usually follow what Jesus taught was to have loyalty to God, restore your relationship with God, to depend on God with a childlike trust, and God is in control. His will is done. Everything is determined by God. The way that it makes it different from Judaism is that Christians believe that Jesus was the Messiah, and Judaism, Jewish people don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah at all. mostly because Jesus didn't fight against Rome, because he wasn't into the politics, and the Jewish people said, our Messiah will fight for us through politics, and Jesus didn't do that. So that was a big indicator why the Jewish people don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. Christians believe that Jesus is the Messiah because he died for all of our sins. That's what Christianity is about. So it was founded in the 1st century. It has, it's the biggest religion. About 2 billion people believe in this religion, which is a lot, about 1/3 of everyone around the world. People believe in it. Countries like Europe, Russia, the Americas, the Philippines, Southern Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, Oceania. There are a lot. There's one God in this religion, obviously. He is omniscient and is a trinity that comes into one. The main book text that they read is the Bible. And the Christian Bible is made of 2 parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the names given to these parts of the Bible are significant. The word testament means covenant. So the notion of an Old New Testament reflects the Christian perspective that the church is the successor to Israel as God's chosen people. The Old Testament is viewed as foundational, authoritative, and relevant, and is read and cherished by Christians along with the New Testament. But it also regarded as having been subsided and fulfilled by the New Testament God has made with the church. Some major holidays that Christians like to celebrate are Easter and Christmas. A lot of people know about these holidays already, but Christmas is celebrating Jesus' birth, when he was conceived through non-intercourse, and he was born into the world, and a very happy day. Easter is another important Christian holiday. It is probably the most important. It's celebrating the resurrection of Christ. So that's the basics of Christianity. Of course, there's so much more. Every religion is just a long story. That's kind of an intro, the basics. If you feel like you think that's an interesting religion, you can look some more up on your own time. I thought it was really interesting. It's probably one of the most difficult religions to learn. So that's Christianity. Hope you liked it, and I hope it definitely gives you some type of get-go on your beliefs, or maybe even help you on a project or something. Who knows? And homework's dumb. And that's about it.
Meet the new boss, same as the old